Okay, welcome to the September 2nd FileMaker Pro User Group 2022. I'm Taylor Sharp. Myself and Greg Price are the chapter co-coordinators. We're glad to have everybody here. We're here at the Harmonic Studios treehouse with a number of people here in person behind me. And you can see everybody up. And then a few people online virtually. So welcome everybody who's here virtually. And we're going to kick things off. Today, we're going to have Rosemary Tietge is going to speak to us about their new programs and, well, sales programs and programs. But anyway, I won't rain on her parade on it. I will say I always enjoy Rosemary being here. She's actually come to our user group a few times years ago, so we always enjoy her here. I know she's on the marketing side of things, but I appreciate her because she's got a technical degree from MIT, and she actually is one of the marketing people that really knows how to write a script and do calculations. So go, Rosemary. So we enjoy her for that end of things. On the announcement side of things, if you haven't signed up for Pause on Air next month, I think September 12th is the last day to sign up, and I think the hotel rooms are running out. You might end up having to camp. So anyway, if you don't like to camp, then sign up quick or try to figure things out. If you don't know what Pause on Air is, it's an in-person conference that tends to be little bit more advanced level than you probably have at the normal developers conference, but it's a smaller one. There are just a few hundred people there. It's held in Northeast Georgia, way out in the sticks in the middle of nowhere at a retreat center, which is really kind of nice. And it's actually, if you think the movie Deliverance, you know exactly where it's out there. So, but it actually is very quaint. And I went for the first time last year and I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to doing it again this year. So, there Rosemary's posted the link up there in case you can see www.pauseonair.com. So if you haven't been, I highly recommend it, especially in light of Claris wasn't able to do it and engage this year. We're really hoping that they'll get to next year. So it'll be awesome stuff. So we certainly have missed those, but yes, in-person conferences are great for learning things. So, but as far as other announcements, let's see, do we have any other announcements? Anybody know anything big on the FileMaker? Everybody should know that Claris is upping FileMaker pricing this month, so buy anything if you want ASAP. Can't think of any other exciting announcements, so if not, we will turn things over here to Rosemary. Rosemary, if you can get going here, I'll turn the focus over to you.
Thanks so much, Taylor. It's good to see everybody virtually. And it's also really good to see a large group in person. It's nice to actually get together and see people. And even though I'm still seeing you through the screen, I'm super excited that you're all together in person. And I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Steve Romig. He's our education content manager at Claris. So he's one of the other people in marketing that has deep product knowledge and can write scripts. And actually he can demo Claris Studio, which I cannot do yet because I have not had time to dive in and learn it. Thanks again for having us. And I don't have a real formal presentation put together. What we've been trying to do for the last several months is get out to user groups on a fairly regular basis to have conversations about what Claris is working on, the programs we've been offering for the last 4 or 5 months, and to just be more present and get developer and customer feedback on things that we can do better. We've set up some new initiatives within Claris to be more adept at collecting and synthesizing feedback from the community. And Steve is a part of that effort among many others. So that's kind of our agenda for today. And I do also have an announcement. We do have a webinar on September 8th, which is next Thursday. It's bright and early California time at 8. It's at, I think, 10 Central Time for all of you. And that will be Brad Freitag, Peter Nelson, our VP of Engineering, Andrew Lacates, Robert Holsey, and a few others. And it's going to be a very interesting format. It's not going to be kind of your traditional product roadmap keynote presentation. It's going to be much more of a conversation during which kind of the future how Claris is thinking about business and technology and where Claris fits into that landscape and where we're headed will come out in the conversation, but it's not really going to be a formal presentation. So probably the easiest way to register for it, if you're not online, I'll drop the link in chat, but if you just go to the claris.com homepage and you haven't registered, we have a homepage takeover banner that is a click through to the registration. So you can just go to claris.com and click through to register. And for those of you who are Claris partners, there's a second webinar that morning at 9 Pacific, so 11 Central, that you will also want to be part of. So that will give you a chance to get a little more insight from the partner team and ask questions and have a conversation amongst the partners about what we cover in the morning webinar will mean for all of you.
Okay.
So yeah, so now like we're here to have a conversation. So I don't know, Taylor, if you muted the room because I suddenly can't hear you at all.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay. If you can't, we can move the computer more in the middle, but you just let us know.
We're just being polite.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, I guess to kick things off, you know, we're always looking at, we've got the new marketing program that people, you know, a lot of people weren't qualified for, but if you were trying to upgrade to site licensing, obviously that was great. But I guess the question is when will the rest of us be jumping in on the studio and, you know, from you know, the licensing side of things when it really will be out. And then just my perspective on studio, you know, I like the direction where things are going, but, you know, just from the developer's perspective, you know, I know it's in the works, but, you know, when is it going to talk to FileMaker server and when is it going to have business automation scripting or something like that? And I mean, I know those things are being worked on, but obviously, you know, those of us in the development world, those are, you know, what we're being held up on. We're excited, but, you know, looking to see where that goes, and hopefully things will be soon along that line.
All right. Well, so first to the availability. So in the spring, the Problem Solver Circle, if you remember, was an upgrade that included a site license, Claris Studio Developer Preview, and Claris Connect standard for what I don't remember what the incremental uplift was. In August, no, late July, right, Steve? This summer, we reintroduced the Problem Solver Circle, which was the same, and also introduced the Claris Platform Bundle, which is an option for a 25% uplift on your current licensing. You maintain your same number of FileMaker licenses and add Claris Studio and Claris Connect. So that is now available to any Claris customer with a current annual license. If you have perpetual licensing, the sales team will work with you to make that happen. If your customers or you are already in a long-term contract, you can also work with the sales team and they'll give credit back on the unused portion of your contract. But it is, you know, there are some, I guess, accounting rules and other like hoops on the order processing side that we need to account for, which means you can't just hand us 25% more money and magically get access to everything through the end of your contract.
Why not?
I wish I could tell you that. We as a team in the marketing side have said, why do we make this so difficult? We would like it to be easier, but we're doing everything we can to streamline access. Hi, Heather.
Hi, sorry I'm late. There was traffic. There's never traffic this time of morning. It was all for you.
So I jumped over here so I could be on camera. I have a follow-up question on that, Rosemary. So as we work with clients on a renewal, what would be how do we get a sense of when we should be pitching them one of these bundles? Is it that there's going to be this kind of is back to what Taylor was talking about? Is it that there's going to be functionality available within the time frame of the license upgrade that we're talking about that they should be looking forward to, that I could tease and say, here's why we should do this now? Should I really concentrate on what's available today in making an A/B decision, and then, hey, once Connect or Studio or something's at a point where we want to leverage it, we'll kind of add or switch you to a bundle mid-license year? Do you have any kind of advice on, just as I'm kind of sitting with a customer and trying to make that decision, like how we should be thinking about, whether the money's worth it now or at a later point?
Steve's looking at me like, you take this. I think that's a really good question. And from what I've heard about what's coming in that webinar on Thursday, you'll get a lot about one way to have that conversation.
Okay.
Coming.
And that's a fair answer, and I'm signed up for it, so fine.
All right. I mean, I think it really comes down to value. If there is something, that your customer needs right now, like they're thinking about even just purely in FileMaker. If you've got a small license footprint with a customer and they're thinking about doing other projects, then Problem Solver Circle might make a lot of sense, because they'll get to that site license for a really good price for 1, 2, or 3 years. And that'll give you the runway and the time to, roll out those other projects and then bring in Connect or Studio when it makes sense. I think for a customer that's already, maxed out on licensing, but may need capabilities of Connect or Studio sometime in the next year or two, then it's a harder conversation. Then it's a harder decision and a harder conversation.
Yeah.
Well, one thing about site licensing, from the partner's perspective, by the time people have hired a partner like us, a lot of times they've already got a site license, and they've been able to, we tend not to be working with, onesie, twosie small things, because it just doesn't make sense to hire us to be in that realm. So the issue always is, if site license was right for them, most of our clients already are on it. And so, so the bundle doesn't work for them. And then the ones that are not on the license, there's always, the site license rules as they are right now. I've got a company, I've got a department with 100 people on it, want it, but you got the department or the 5,000 people in the whole company. And then, so you can't get, they're the rules. And I understand you have to have rules about them, but there are a lot of things that hold back. We also have a lot of, I run into a lot of customers that don't, the other rule that they run onto is we've got, 100 people in a company, 5 people use FileMaker, and if we're going to site license, we got to count 100 people, only though 5 will use it. So there's always, yes, we as partners love to get our clients on site licenses when possible, but they, a lot of times we're, working within the restrictions of the site licensing out there, and those are big hurdles for us. I mean, I know you guys put them in there for reasons, but those are things that just happen with almost every client when I'm having to deal with it. Either if they've got a whole, if most everything the company's using FileMaker, it makes real sense to get it. If you got 75% of your company using it, great. But when you got 5% of your company using it, well, then it doesn't make sense. So, we understand that they're annual licenses and stuff, but then you have issues about the logging on for anonymous users or not, and the new licensing that came out for that. Well, you don't get that unless you're a site license. So anyway, it would be nice if there was some more options on it, even if it cost a little bit more money there are companies I have in there that would like to get a site license, would be willing to pay more money than what it is right now, but they're not going to pay for 5,000 people when they at best have 100 people that would use it. So
if I understand correctly, you're suggesting perhaps like the option for a department license versus a site license.
What a concept.
Yeah.
something along those lines. So anyway, those are things that, because the problem solver circle is about how to get, we get that you guys want people on site licenses. And part of what I'm saying is we want them on too, but some of it, the rules are keeping us from working. There's certain segments of our clients that unfortunately don't fit in the rules. And I'll tell you, you're leaving money on the table, because most all these clients, if they would just had to pay another, 25, 50% more, they would, no problem,
Yeah.
So from my perspective, you're leaving money on the table. But
Okay, I'm making notes, so to send back. I would also make sure you share that with Tyler, the partner manager, if you haven't talked to him recently, because they have the sales and partner teams have a lot more discretion and direct input into licensing models and things.
So something I'm a little unclear about, and maybe Rosemary or Steve, maybe one of you can take a run at re-articulating this, is, so we have one customer in the problem solver circle from very early in the program. They were the quintessential 5-user license, but larger organization. And we already had an expansion of Claris product on the roadmap with them. So it was a perfect fit, perfect timing, right? Made sense. They're in that program. But like Taylor said, most of our customers are already site license customers. So when that program rolled out, we just crossed them off the list for even considering, right? Yeah. So it seems like, if I'm understanding correctly, the difference between the bundle and the problem solver circle is the bundle is attempting to do some of the same thing, as in give us access to those new tools, and then kind of new, Claris Next, if you will, with a more established customer, with a customer who may already be a site license customer, versus problem solver circle is really more that instance where we've got a toehold, but there's potential substantial opportunity for expansion. Is that a proper understanding of the two different programs? Can you add more color to that? Yeah,
I think that's a very good understanding of the two different programs. Like the things we are addressed, that the platform bundle is really addressing, that we learned from the initial problem solver circle, is one, we needed an option for the existing site license customer where they could affordably get the additional tools. And so you can always, talk to sales, and I think it is 25% on top of a current site license to get the additional, to get Studio and Connect. Two, there were a lot of small customers, customers that only had 5 or 10 employees, for whom buying up to a site license didn't make sense because they didn't need the anonymous users you get with a site license. And the third was actually those small footprints or medium-sized footprints in large organizations, where we had
I know there were cases where, one department in a really big company came to us and said, we're really interested in this. But then, we did the audit across the whole company and said, well, the uplift isn't based on your 15 licenses, it's based on all the licenses in use across the entire organization. But they had immediate need for that use case.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It would be nice if you had like a department option, and then you have to protect your licensing base. I understand that. And it might be where if you made some rule that says you can do the department pricing that counts everybody in your department plus an extra, third or, 40, 50% or something, just so that counts for the, overhead and other departments that support that or something. But if there was at least an option for it, I think there are a lot of companies who would do things and would. The problem I have is a lot of those departments have 5 people in there. There are a lot of other people who would use it if it was available and they could get the site license. But if they're stuck on the annual licensing, they're trying to keep as few licenses as possible and just, getting the minimum, just annual ones that they can get. And of course, as a partner, most of us out here want them on site licenses. And I know that you're trying to protect your base and money. And if you gave them an option to do it, but just, made it cost more, I think you would be able to get a lot of those sales. Yeah. I mean, some option to do it, but reward yourself for it too,
And an interesting block that Claris had was, we had a couple clients who would have been good candidates except for their licensing for the whole studio thing. Perpetual concurrencies.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it was like it was as if Claris had said, yeah, sorry, we're not interested in those people because the licensing was based upon whatever the pricing would be if you were to buy those things now. And so it was silly. And the net result, in one case, was a great opportunity for the client to save money. The advice was just don't upgrade your license because everything is, you purchase perpetual licenses for a reason. There's no reason to do this or that or the other thing. They're going to keep going for now. Later on, maybe you'll make that decision and you can pay to renew your perpetuals, or you could pay to do something different. But that licensing actually blocked, and it wasn't just one client. I think we had a couple different clients where it was a similar situation where they had proactively gotten perpetual licenses before.
Well, and you were dealing with the cost of concurrency adding prices, not making sense for your clients.
Yeah. But for our one client, it was brilliant for them. 410 user site license, for the price of, it really, I mean, it's a
No brainers.
great opportunity for them. So
Yeah, and I don't think I honestly don't think at the end of the program that they'll end up with a site license, but they may end up with a 100 seat license or something. It's something, right? There's definitely dramatic expansion opportunity. So pivoting a little adjacent to this, what can we talk about anonymous users? So it just kind of reading the tea leaves and putting together what I think I hear and what I see. Traditionally, of course, way back in the day, we had the runtime was the perennial crowd favorite for anonymous users, and Claris finally killed that. Much to some people's chagrin, I could care less personally. I'm glad it went. Wasn't a problem with me. But and then Web Direct is kind of the low code anonymous user option. Of course, most of us that have coding teams, of course, custom web is the obvious anonymous user pathway, though certainly more expensive. But we have several customers, several of our small customers who have maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 people in the organization, but they've got a site license strictly for those
anonymous concurrencies with WebDirect, right? It's
Yep,
kind of
yep.
their
I have a bunch
their
of those.
cheap magic bullet to make this work, right? So it seems like Studio is really the new long-term pathway for fulfilling this need, and literally today it's the only thing it fulfills is kind of the anonymous form methodology. So if we were to guess or look at the crystal ball of where this is headed, do we expect at some point that there might be a more appropriate anonymous user licensing model that specifically recognizes there's value there, but isn't so contorted as I've got to sell a site license to a 5-person company to get 100 clicks in, right? Like that's that is a very non-cloud modern way of looking at, technology and costs and so forth. And it's kind of backwards way of selling it. So any thoughts or comment on that particular kind of subset of this as Claris looks forward?
I know we're thinking about it. There's a lot of big brains at Claris right now thinking about kind of licensing as a whole. And there's definite recognition of the need for anonymous form, or for that anonymous, both anonymous, fully anonymous, and also authenticated but loosely connected users. So a supplier portal or a customer portal, or an internal kind of HR employee portal where you want to give all employees access to something, but only a handful of people need the full pro client backend access to the data. Steve, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I mean, that's a good explanation of it. I mean, Studio is a good step forward, as many of you probably already know. It's not the final step. And as Rosemary said, we're still trying to figure out some of the other steps. But, right now it's baby steps for us for getting to what you guys want. And hopefully we'll have more information about it to share later on. But right now, yeah, we know it's a bit of a struggle for you guys and we're working on it.
Have you guys definitely married yourself to MongoDB?
I mean, for the cloud scale Studio backend, yes.
Okay.
I mean, and thinking about it, and I'm granted have not dived way deep into this like some people have. So one recommendation that we've been giving to people and we've all heard internally is if you have not yet, Richard Carlton did a live stream last month, or actually maybe it was in July, with Chris Moyer, where they kind of dove into what Mongo means as the underpinning for Claris Studio. And the advantage is scale and not having a sort of SQL normalized data store. So
I'm just curious, not to go off the rails too much, but there seemed to be maybe a follow-up question to that. I mean, is there a concern about MongoDB, or if you had a crystal ball or a magic wand, would you be like, oh, I wish Studio used something else instead?
No, but there's some things that Mongo definitely brings in scalability. Love that. But there's things that Draco does that Mongo doesn't. Mongo clearly poorly handles container fields, and there's still, anyway, I got some feedback from someone who was doing some of the Mongo stuff saying if we move Studio to try to really replace FileMaker, which sounds like a natural thing on it, we'll either have to compromise in what can be done, because Mongo is different. It certainly is more scalable, but there's some unique things that Draco is good at handling that virtually no other databases handle very well. You know, anyway, well, I just, you know, the more, you know, if you guys are married to it, great, you know, embrace it, let's move forward and we'll go on it. But I was just, you know, I wasn't sure if that's really definitely, you know, if, you know, Claris had said they had officially bought into, and it really is what's moving forward.
Well, I think one thing to recognize and to keep in mind is that Studio is being built to be complementary to FileMaker, not, at least in the foreseeable future, to replace FileMaker. So if you look at the use cases we've started with for Claris Studio, I mean, first was anonymous data capture. You know, quickly be able to put up a web form, collect data from anonymous users, and then consume that data in Claris Pro and link it up to your existing FileMaker data and work with it however you need to work with it. You know, next use case is visibility and alignment. So dashboards, charting, reporting, much more easily than you can do either with the native FileMaker charting tools or with any of the JavaScript libraries that people have adopted to use in web viewers. And then also to make those charts available to, again, known but loosely connected users. So your CEO who's on the go all the time and just wants that heartbeat look at what's going on in the business, but doesn't want to have to open up and log into FileMaker to do it, just wants to be able to see, go to a website and see what's going on right now. And I think as we continue to release updates, those incremental updates to Studio over the next several months, you'll see that complementary to FileMaker development path continue.
And maybe it's, you know, obviously I'm sitting out in the partner community and there's rumors that float around. And clearly, you know, some of the rumors have been that, hey, you know, Studio, the goal of Studio is eventually take over FileMaker to be able to develop within a web browser and not an application. And, you know, so I hear things like that, you know, said a lot, but, you know, I don't know if those are even any target goals that anybody has there, Claris, but I mean, and of course, you know, Claris has to be careful, just like we have to do what you say publicly versus what you're doing internally. And so I know you can't say some things, but, you know, there certainly is discussions out here that people see that, hey, you know, that is FileMaker next. And, you know, it would be all cloud. It would be, you know, development in the web, you know, things like that. Those are the rumors that are floating around. And, you know, maybe they need to be quashed, but that's certainly not what its goals are for now. But, you know, I'm just saying those are things that are said.
You've heard him. I think what Rosemary said is definitely true and valid. There is no plans whatsoever. Here's the deal. We are all on this call right now because of the Draco engine, right? There's no way we're throwing it out. We love that thing. So we're going to continue to use it. We're going to continue to expand on it. We're going to continue to make changes with FileMaker Pro. But we're also going to be making updates to Claris Studio as well. And as Rosemary said, it's going to be side by side. It's just another tool in your tool belt, right? Things that were difficult in FileMaker, like making a form and making it available to anonymous users, takes a couple of minutes in Studio, right? So that's what we're talking about. It's not replacing, it's helping and supplementing and complementing what you already have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I had like a group I was at a couple of weeks ago, you know, had some conversations, and, you know, as Studio matures, there may be places where you pitch doing an entire project just in Studio because it makes sense. It's a lightweight use case, but we understand that most FileMaker apps out there are not simple. They are incredibly complex and robust. And you're doing them in FileMaker because none of the cloud tools that currently exist can do what FileMaker can do. And that's not going to change. And we're not going to be able to change that with Claris Studio either. So as Steve said, this is another tool to use that complements the existing tools Claris builds.
Okay. Something let me switch gears on something that's interesting. I, for one, have never been sold big on Connect. Because most everything it does, I can just make an API call to those things anyway. Why would I want some middleware thing? Maybe it makes it easier, but if I already know how to do this, why use it? API calls and draw calls don't scare me. What are the benefits of it? What I like to see is when you guys are throwing bundles in, and if incidentally Connect is in the bundle, like we're talking now, suddenly that becomes a lot more useful to be in my toolkit if it's available at no additional incremental cost to start using with a number of my clients. So I will say that when seeing that as the bundle deal suddenly piqued my interest, and I will tell you as a partner, I've pretty much been ignoring and avoiding Connect, but if it's part of a deal that's already included, I'm certainly a lot more interested in using it under those situations. So just FYI.
Cool.
Yeah, I would echo that. Kind of related to that, back to the anonymous thing, the thought that I would put out there is that almost all of our customers, Harmonic's customers at least, they're paying a fair amount of good money to someone for the stuff that Claris Studio, we imagine in the hopefully fairly near future, would be provided, right? Where we've got some kind of anonymous build out. In our case, it's typically they're paying the money to AWS with custom cloud componentry that we've set up. But it could be Azure, it could be whatever. So what I'm hoping that Claris can figure out how to do is to price Studio for those, especially in those weird use cases where I've got like 4 people in the company, but then we've got this extra company usage model where historically we would have handled it with a site license and web direct anonymous login, right? So the hope is that we can come up with pricing that essentially is competitive with these other ways of solving that problem, right? I'm gonna spin up a LAMP machine in AWS and I'm gonna write custom code and you're gonna pay monthly for that LAMP machine. You're gonna pay me once for that custom code, and that's your anonymous user model, for instance. Well, if I can A/B that with, or we can just license Studio in this particular profile, and I can drag and drop, for 2 hours instead of 20 hours of custom code, and look, we've got the same terminus, that's a sell as long as it makes sense, right? As long as we're all aware that what we're comparing Claris's ability to host and resell its microservices-based architecture thing, Claris Studio thing, versus us doing, kind of a more bulk one-off LAMP machine. In theory, Claris Studio model should be more efficient. It should be more cost-effective. You should be able to be cost competitive, and still, you make a profit and so forth. But we've got to be able to kind of tear it apart and compare it, because we will, right? Otherwise, if it doesn't make sense, I'll just keep setting up individual LAMP machines and tying them together, and we'll find a way to make it work. So I want it to work with Claris, but also we're not dumb about what our options are. We're gonna have to be also on the customer side, right? So I think when I'm thinking about an anonymous pricing, especially, that's where my mind goes, is that I'm hoping that you all are thinking about models like that and finding pathways to make that make sense from a sale and resale standpoint, because there's definitely lots of instances where there's good money to be made in lots of small increments perpetually. Yeah.
Noted. And Steve, you may hear from someone at Claris to have a conversation about that, because I think you articulated that balancing act really clearly.
Sure, yeah. Sure.
This is a more rudimentary question. When is FileMaker going to be available on the App Store, where I can distribute it through Apple Business Essentials, for instance? Because it's a big pain in the butt. It's the only application. I manage hardware as well as do FileMaker for some clients. FileMaker is the most annoying application to get on people's computer. And if it were in Business Essentials, which I think it is in education, you know, what's the holdup? Because it's exactly related to this, but if I'm buying licenses, can't I just download it from the App Store? I can't, but I want to.
Like, yeah, certainly.
What's the technological problem there? Because I got a lot of apps that require licensing. Microsoft is notorious. I can download, I can hand the person a computer, everything's installed. They just have to log in once and it's paid for in my dashboard. Is FileMaker on that path? Because making it easier to purchase and distribute, that's where I think it connects to this conversation.
I'm
If you
second that because I saw that.
We don't have anything to share right now, but if you saw Rosemary's and my grins, that might point you in a direction of what might be happening. I'll tell you this also. You mentioned something about what's the technology hurdle. Prior to us having a drag and drop installer on the Mac side, it was our installer, right? Because we installed things. So we took a step closer to what you're hoping that we may or may not do by having the drag and drop installer on the Mac. So all I can say is maybe be a little more patient and maybe we'll have something to share soon.
Yes, and I would add to that. We are, we have engineers and product managers that work in lockstep with peers at Apple on many things. We have you may or may not have heard about is we have a big partnership with Apple Education right now, and like we're looking at how modeling that successful partnership into with other teams at Apple. So there's definitely some energy there.
I do have one comment. You guys, we get the periodic database you can download for the website that has the pricing model and God, 1,000 whatever SKUs. I don't know how you can FileMaker have that, but somehow it does.
There.
Yeah. Anyway, it sure would be useful if that was just like a FileMaker server somewhere, and you just logged in and it always had the latest pricing. I don't always have to go to a web page and download to make sure I got the latest
you would need
pricing.
like a server-based product that would work on a server.
Yeah.
And have anonymous logins. Oh.
There you go.
Well, at least it doesn't like block you so much anymore. It'll tell you it's out of date, but the pricing remains the same.
I remember when you guys used to send it around in Excel spreadsheets, so thank God we're long past that. We actually are using the product.
I will not tell you how many of my gray hairs and nights and weekends I lost to building the initial releases of that tool.
Well, the itself is fine. The problem is how accurate is it? When do we know when those pricing changes? Well, we don't.
Yeah.
Download a new one. Well, I hate having to go download a new one all the time to know I got the right prices.
They don't, except for when they do.
Yeah,
And
that's
then-
right.
And then there's often a challenge, Rosemary, that this just happened to us where multiple times, and I've talked to the licensing people about it. We get our quotes, but then they'll send us the information with the pricing for the client. And I, even though we've got the CP assisting, it's like, oh, wait a minute, that was 25 license. What was the one? Now I got to go back. Will you please send me the right PO? And so things have become delayed because it's as if the ordering side isn't using the same database.
Well, your PO system, something changed. It moved over to Apple or something. But anyway, there's something that changed, and we certainly saw it at our end.
And the worst part is I'll look at the PO and where I know I need to report back to our accounting person, said this is how much we're going to be paying, but now I have the wrong amount. Even though when I call up, Claris knows their data are correct. Good, but mine isn't. So there is something that gets set off there, and then it gets related to the
or you don't get the PO and you don't know about it until you have collections phony, and then you're like, oh no, Mr. Laidlaw's bill.
Well, I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one who's had that experience.
Quick, we'll get you something over, but I have to actually get something in my hand before I can pay it. But anyway, as long as we're dreaming, it would be nice also to log in a database and say who are all my customers at this time and when their license come up, so I know to be following up ahead of time. But not a dream world, but it would sure would be useful.
And we hope that they have it right. They know this is Harmonic, this is Taylor, this is their clients, and this is when their license
Right.
And I had this imagination that they have a database, for example, on a server someplace, and they can access it, and see that. But I know it's not, business isn't quite that simple, and there's probably Excel spreadsheets, but.
Yeah, anyway, those are things we maybe they're a little bit of dreams, but it sure would be nice someday if something along those lines happens on the partner side. So. We would prefer you getting studio right and doing more first. Just priority wise, but anyway.
So I have a general question, I think both for the room and virtually and in person, and also for Rosemary and Steve maybe to weigh in on. I'm just curious about this. We've been working pretty hard lately at seriously moving some of our key customers to Linux on the server backend. And we've gone through a long teething process of trying to get through all the various hurdles to make that work, especially with ADFS and attachment to AD and stuff like that. So I'm just curious how other people are feeling about Linux as a solid production on-prem or custom cloud, if you will, right? Replacement for Windows, and how we think that trend is going to evolve over the next couple of years. So
it'd be interesting to know. I mean, you guys probably can't say anything, but it'd be interesting to know the number of licenses sold for our installs of it on Ubuntu versus Windows versus Mac.
I don't
obviously think from the open source into the world and the and licensing, it makes lots of sense.
Yeah, Rosemary and I don't have that info.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's growing because I have heard that in conversations with engineering and product management, but I don't know what the exact number is. And I don't know if you've all seen it, but there is a new engineering blog that came out in the last couple of weeks about deploying server in a Docker container on Ubuntu 20. So
we played with that a little bit. That's good stuff. I think what I'm looking for, from my seat, it is the logical pathway forward, right? So if I'm trying to guess at what decisions are being made behind the scenes at Claris, and especially in engineering corner, and I'm trying to support Claris into the next 5-10 years of on the server side and the FileMaker part of the platform, and I'm trying to support FileMaker Cloud. You know, I want to back end all that stuff on Linux. So from my seat, it feels like we should be figuring out how to make this stuff work and pull the trigger as soon as it's viable and technically stable, because in all likelihood, it may at some point become the only server or the only practical or reasonable server platform option available to us, right? So that's kind of the road we've been going down. Maybe all I'm asking for is, yeah, that sounds like reasonable thinking. You know, but that's, yeah.
Well, I always think your thinking's great. So.
Well, thanks. Maybe from someone that I don't employ.
Well, I will say, since you got on Ubuntu, you've gone through your first versions of it, and it's now certainly maturing more. There are less weird issues than when it first, came out. So I mean, when it first came out, I was just staying away from it because there's just too many weird things. And I mean, just down to, I mean, there's still issues like, okay, I don't have my Adobe and Microsoft Font Center, so I can't spin up a PDF the way I want on the server. I mean, there's still stuff that needs to be worked out. But the ease in getting it installed without some weird command line knowledge is a whole lot better than it was originally. So,
right. And of course, there's some wonderful scripting things you can do to do the install. I just thought of something, Rosemary. I wanted to throw this out for y'all. Claris needs to provide installers which can be done separated from the internet. I know there's a desire for licensing, what have you, but we've had, we have clients where the server will never see the internet, and we just went through the process in a sandbox trying to do an update, and of course we were thwarted because you couldn't even, and this is a 2016 machine, and we're trying to get a Pro installed. It ain't going to happen. So, but we need an entirely encapsulated thing. If you need the .NET 4.8 thing, it needs to be a .NET 4.8 that isn't downloadable. Everything. This might be hard to do. I understand because we're using other components. But in that would allow for those clients who have to be isolated by their bylaws, right, to have a system that's up and running. I don't know how you do the registration. Maybe there's something else with a certificate like we do with domain names. We go do a little thing, put a little file up on the server someplace, and it just works. Oh, okay, we know you're the owner. But that's important because you have clients in that environment. So
well, I used to work for the government, and that was an issue. And then for certain cases, I work with another one that works with the Federal Reserve Bank, and they, so. Yeah, it does get to be an issue because even such things as saying, well, let me take this computer off this secure network and go over and plug it into the regular world to download it. Well, the rules are like, no, now you could potentially contaminate it. You can't bring it back into the,
Right.
I mean, we used to get by with doing stuff like that. More and more, they're not saying, no, you can't.
And ironically, right now it's Pro, which is more complicated to install the client than it is to install the server.
Yeah.
So anyways, putting that out.
If you haven't raised that with tech support, I would please do. I'll take it back as well. But
her answer is it doesn't install. It's just.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good, good point. Because I remember supporting back in the day when I was a systems engineer, I worked with half a dozen national labs. So yeah, the Department of Energy was not big on having things on the internet.
Yes, yeah, obviously.
So yeah, I get it.
Okay, but I didn't get any kind of Claris response on my,
On your Linux question?
my Linux server. Do you have any color to add?
My color would be you may be reading the tea leaves correctly.
Okay, fair, that's enough color, thank you.
And you may learn a lot more next week.
All right,
Okay.
also, yeah. I will say that we went through again your ADFS setup technical instructions. They were very well written. We were successful with them. My business partner was pleasantly surprised, and he's not often forthcoming in praise for Claris's technical documentation. So, I mean, there are some good things on that front. The doctor thing is cool and definitely something we're playing with, and I think that has some really interesting possibilities as well. So it's good stuff.
I will pass that on to the team that writes the engineering blogs, because the other thing, as long as we're on that topic, if there are topics that you would like to see in an engineering blog, send them my way. Part of what they are trying to do as a team is be agile and respond to customer feedback. So both, if you find errors or holes in them, let us know about that. And also if there's topics you'd like to see. I can say like one success of the community asking for something was getting the, like we did the how to get PHP installed on a Windows machine article a long time ago, but then we took PHP out of the Mac because Apple took PHP out of the Mac. And, we pretty quickly turned around an article on getting PHP installed for FileMaker Server on Mac as well. So they are responsive, and they do like to hear what would be useful, and what they are publishing is useful.
Okay, any last questions as we kind of wind things up here? Appreciate everybody being here. And
when do the hard questions start? These have all been softballs up to this point, guys. Come on.
Softballs to Rosemary, right? Oh, goodness gracious. Anyway, I think unless you guys have any additional comments that you guys have for us, any good direction for most of us out here are partners. None of us are users in this user group. So
I do have, I'm trying to think. I would say stay tuned.
Definitely.
we look forward to next week for sure. So
Yeah, next week. Well, the other thing I will add is we are also doing a webinar on, I think it's the 13th of September, aimed at business stakeholders. It will be Brad having a conversation with other CEOs about business and technology. So if you have customers that you think would fit, that would be interested in that, please invite them. I think the partner team is, if they haven't already, will be soon sending out an invitation that you can use. But keep your eyes open for that.
okay.
Keep your eyes peeled on the YouTube channel, because Steve keeps producing awesome videos about Claris Studio improvements.
Hey, Steve.
I was definitely going to throw that out there. If you haven't checked out, well, first of all, if your knowledge begins and ends when we launched it in the spring, it's definitely come a long way. It still has a long way to go. There's no doubt about it, but we've added a lot of cool stuff. So if you want to check out the new features and you don't have an opportunity to actually get your hands on Studio right now, these little videos that we put out will be helpful in letting you know what you can do with Studio now.
And that's just on Claris is the channel, or what's the channel?
Yeah, we've actually created a special playlist for Claris Studio videos. I think there's 7 or 8 of them up there right now.
Yeah, hold
So
on,
definitely
hold
worth
on.
checking out.
Somewhere.
I'm looking.
Show us
Here. I am dropping into chat the link to that playlist.
There we
So,
That's a good, so I haven't watched any of your videos, though I will. And let me just say that conceptually, I'm very much on board with this kind of thing because, you know, you just don't have time all the time to stay on top of this stuff, especially when it's not a once a year release, right? It's an iterative process. And so, yeah, I look forward to checking these out. I think that's a good method. So keep going on.
Yeah. And what your current as of like 3 weeks ago, Steve?
Yeah, so we actually released a new version of Studio on Tuesday, but it was more of a behind the scenes. There wasn't any like real cool new features or functionality, but everything else is pretty much up to date. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing is if you haven't subscribed to the product announcements group in Claris community, I try to be really diligent about dropping all FileMaker updates and Claris Studio updates and Claris Connect updates in there, either with the full release notes or with a shortened version that points to the longer release notes.
Yeah, like 953 just came out.
Yeah. And for those of you who are security conscious, the big update in 953 is an update to SSL or TSL.
TLS.
Or TLS. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
You would think I would keep all those track of all of those being married to an InfoSec attorney, but no.
Okay, well, thank you for coming and speaking with us here, Rosemary and Steve. We appreciate you coming and joining our little group and sharing with us this information. And,
anytime.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Invite us back. We may, I've been trying to keep my calendar clear so I can just drop in and listen at more developer groups as well, but that is challenging.
Awesome. Okay, well, next month, I'm not sure what our presentation is. It might be Heather, it might not, but.
Rosemary, I want to know why I don't see your name on the pause on error attendee list.
You do not see my name at Pause on Error because there is an annual fiber arts retreat I go to every year, and it's the same week.
Okay.
And I had registered and paid for that before they announced Pause on Error.
All right, you're excused.
She'll be up in New England, eh?
Actually, I'll be in southern Wisconsin this year.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
But I know Janine will be there, and I think Louis will be there. A couple other people from Claris. Andrew will be there because it's close for him. So
Good. Okay, well, without further ado, we're going to have lunch here. Steve, enjoy your PB&J. And
thanks, everyone. It was great to see you all.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.